Hi everyone, it's me Gaming 2, and welcome to the 11th round of tier lists. And just like usual, we are going to be doing an A and B tier list. But today's A tier list is going to be huge, as this is what's going to be replacing the SpongeBob pre-movie ranking I was talking about. Today, we are going to be talking about every single pre-movie SpongeBob episode. And, well, I don't know what else to say. I've been anticipating talking about this topic for months. And, yeah, let's get on with it. There may be a few breaks in between the video because of how long it's going to be. And we're going to be relatively quick talking about each episode because there's 117 to rank. So let's just get right on into it. Arg. A tier. Arg is a funny episode. I especially love the whole pirate concept and how passionate Mr. Krabs is. But I won't put it in B because I won't put it in S because I kind of find Mr. Krabs to be a little bit of a jerk in the episode. But A is a great place for this episode. It's a really good episode. Artist Unknown, I will also put in A. Another really funny episode. I think this is one of Squidward's funniest episodes. I won't put it in S because I do feel like it has a couple of cringy jokes, I guess you could say, but overall, I do really like Artist Unknown. As Seen on TV. Wow. So far, we're only having A tier for all the A's, as a matter of fact. As Seen on TV is an A-rated episode. It's really funny, especially the whole commercial they do and SpongeBob thinking how popular he is and is full of himself and stuff like that. It gets a tiny bit irritating, like a sliver irritating, but that's the only reason why I'm not putting it at S. But what I can say is an S is Band Geeks. I mean, come on. While it is not my favorite episode of the series like most people, it is in my top 10. It is an absolutely fantastic episode with so many classic jokes like, is mayonnaise an instrument? Or Plankton going across his harmonica and then passing out. And, come on. Sweet Victory is a sweet victory. Band Geeks is an absolute S tier episode. Big Pink Loser, I'm gonna actually put in B. I like it. I think it's a good episode, but Patrick's a prick, which is especially in the later seasons, kind of shows up here a little bit. And he's a little bit of a jerk, but I would say before he opens the pickle jar, this would have been an A episode, but the second half of this episode is kind of mean-spirited, so I'm going to put it in B. Alright, Boating School. I'm going to put Boating School in B also. I think SpongeBob cheating is kind of cringeworthy, and also Patrick is a little bit of a jerk in this episode, but other than that, I think it's got a lot of funny jokes, especially the joke, act natural. And, yeah. Boating School goes in B. Born Again Krabs. This is weird. All the B's are going in B's. Born Again Krabs is a B. I think it is, a fantastic... Man, okay. I should have gotten more sleep last night. I'm kind of tired, but I can get through this. Born Again Krabs is a B-rated episode. I think this is one of the cheapest he's been in the pre-movie era, which kind of is something... I don't mind him being a little cheap, but I think it goes a little too far in this episode, so... But there are some funny jokes, just probably some of the least memorable of the pre-movie seasons. So B tier for Born Again Krabs. Bossy Boots. I'm between an A and a B. I'm probably gonna put it at B. I'm sorry. For all the B's going in B's. This wasn't meant to be a joke or anything, but well, you got Band Geeks in S, so what can I say? Bossy Boots is funny. My problem is, I guess I don't like Pearl in the episode particularly. She just tries to change the Krusty Krab a little too much, and it becomes basically a restaurant for teenage girls and stuff like that, and I'm not a particular fan of that, but the end of the episode is really funny when Mr. Krabs can't fire her, and then he passes out, and then the smell of money wakes him up. I found that funny. Other than that, though, it's not a particularly great episode, but it's good. Bubble Buddy, A. We got a B lettered episode that's an A. Bubble Buddy's a really good episode. My favorite part is how long he's in the bathrooms at Goo Lagoon. 2 hours is long enough. I also like his order at the Krusty Krab, where Squidward basically gets him everything on the menu in such a picky way. I'm not going to put it in S, though, and I think it is probably on the lower tier of B, because it's, I guess you could say, townsfolk go a little too far trying to pop Bubble Buddy. I find that kind of cruel. So, I'm not going to put in an A for that. Bubble Stand's also going to go in B, or A, excuse me, I'm tired. Bubble Stand's also going in A. It's very funny. It's a very classic SpongeBob episode, especially the technique. SpongeBob's bubble blowing technique. But it is one of the more forgettable pre-movie episodes to me, despite being one of the first few episodes of the entire show. And it maybe has a little bit of that season 1-ish forgettability, I guess you can say. It's still a really good episode. It's A tier, but definitely on the lower part of A tier. Alright. Since we're going on to C, I think I'll adjust this a little more. I will put Artist Unknown at the top of A. I will put Bubble Buddy above As Seen on TV. That's probably good right there. That's probably about good for A tier. I will put Born Again Krabs as the worst episode so far that we've ranked. That's actually good. Actually, I'll probably put Big Pink Loser below Boating School. Okay. Can You Spare a Dime? Oh, it's an S tier episode. I will put it below Band Geeks, though. It's a really funny episode. I love how Squidward basically freeloads at SpongeBob's pineapple after he quits the Krusty Krab. Almost every single joke in this episode works, especially the jokes once Squidward becomes a jerk there. He's a jerk, but he gets called out for it. If you're wondering, why do you get so upset about characters being jerks? It's mostly because they get away with the crap they do. Squidward, not really in this episode, so, and it's freaking hilarious. Almost every joke in this episode works. So Can You Spare a Dime is absolutely getting S tier. Chocolate with Nuts. Oh, excuse me, allergy season is starting right now, and I'm starting to get allergies. If you hear me cough a few times on the video, I apologize. Chocolate with Nuts is my favorite episode so far. Is it my favorite episode of the entire show? That's hard to tell. It could be. It is a freaking brilliant episode. Everything from the magazine they read at the beginning of the episode to the chocolate fish to the guy who tricks them into buying stuff throughout the entire episode to my favorite scene is the two old ladies they try to sell chocolate to. Chocolate. I remember when they first invented chocolate. Sweet, sweet chocolate. I always hated it. Chocolate with Nuts is one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. Speaking of which, Christmas Who? Another one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. Bang Geeks, you get above Can You Spare a Dime, but Christmas Who is fantastic. Oh my god, what a fantastic episode. It's just so beautiful. It's not as funny, I think, as the other episodes in the S tier, but everything from SpongeBob being excited about Christmas to, yes, Squidward's a little bit of a jerk in the episode, but he makes up for it. He brings Christmas to Bikini Bottom, which is beautiful, and my favorite scene is when SpongeBob makes him a wooden clarinet that plays Christmas music. I mainly think this is one of the most beautiful episodes of the show, so it's an absolute S tier for me. Clams. Clams is going to go in B, but I think at the top of B. I think it's a funny episode. I do think Mr. Krabs is a freaking psychopath in a negative way in this episode, to where it takes away from the enjoyability a little bit. But I do think it's funny. My favorite scene in the episode is the beginning when the customer gives Mr. Krabs his $1 millionth and then he kicks him out. Get out! He wins nothing. Clams is funny. Club SpongeBob. Club SpongeBob is gonna go, I'm not sure about B or A. Probably A. I'll probably put it in between Bubble Stand and As Seen on TV. Club SpongeBob is a really funny episode. It's the episode where Squidward, SpongeBob, and Patrick get lost in the woods or the jungle, and they have to survive out there. You guys know the episode. My favorite scene is this whole scene where they're eating food that drops from the plane, and Squidward tries to take some, but the magic conch is like, nope, you're not doing that. Club SpongeBob is a really good episode. I do think, I don't know, I'm not a fan of the woo scene. I'm just gonna be honest, I kind of cringe at that a little bit. I know a lot of people find that funny, but it's not my cup of tea. That joke, I don't find that joke funny, I'm just being honest. So Club SpongeBob goes in A, but on the lower tier of A. Culture Shock. Culture Shock is gonna go, I think, at the very top of B. I think it's a very funny episode. I think it's, especially Squidward's whole act in the episode, where he basically dances, and then they throw the tomatoes at him, but they're really impressed by SpongeBob's broom skills. That's funny. I do think it's B because it's a little slow, I guess you can say, but yeah, Culture Shock is a good episode. I'm gonna put it at the top of B, but it's not one of my favorites so far. Alright, we're gonna take a little break now that we're getting into the next letter. I think we're gonna do D through I next, and then we're gonna take a break after that. Stay tuned, guys. Doing time. Alright, I'm just kidding. Doing time is gonna go on B. I think I'm going to place it in between Bossy Boots and Big Pink Loser. Doing Time is a good episode. Definitely a very good episode, but I don't really like the torment Mrs. Puff goes through, I guess you can say, so Wow, so far the most episodes in a tier is B. I'm kind of surprised. I know we have hundreds of more left, but I expected we'd have more A's and B, or A's and S's than B's. But B is still good. Doing Time is probably a perfect middle tier episode for the pre-movie era. It's definitely better than a lot of episodes, but I definitely wouldn't put it near the classics. Dumped. I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. Yeah, I think Dumped is a really good episode. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I love this episode. Is it a little bit of nostalgic blindness? Yes, it is, but still. I freaking adore Dumped. I think it's... Yeah, SpongeBob gets tortured a little bit by Gary and Patrick, and Gary going with Patrick and stuff like that, and Patrick kind of acting like a prick. But, you know what? This episode just has so many funny jokes in it that I always laugh at. Especially the scenes with Larry the Snail. He's a freaking jerk. But, yeah, I like Dumped a lot more than most people do. There's some episodes that totally deserve the bad rating that they get, but I don't think Dumped does. Dying for Pie, an amazing episode. S tier all the way. It is probably the best episode of the earlier half of season 2, in my opinion. I absolutely love the dynamic between Squidward and SpongeBob, and Squidward shows that he truly doesn't hate SpongeBob as much as he thought he did. Because when he thinks he's on his deathbed, he does everything to help him out, because Squidward wants to be a good person. And there's also some very funny jokes. This would go great with some milk. And the whole compilation of SpongeBob's bucket list. This is just a classic episode. Employee of the Month, we're on the E episodes now. I'll put it at the very top of B. I think it's a good episode. The competitiveness between Squidward and SpongeBob is a little bit frustrating, but it's not nearly as bad as even some of the other pre-movie episodes. But it is a little annoying watching that, especially towards the beginning, when, like, SpongeBob is just slamming Squidward's alarm clock, trying to sabotage him. I get that they want to compete for Employee of the Month, but it's a little bit hard to watch. It's not particularly good on SpongeBob's end, so I am definitely going to put Employee of the Month at B. It has a few funny moments, but I think it's on definitely the weaker half of the pre-movie episodes. Fools in April. Is Employee of the Month the only E-lettered episode in the pre-movie era? I never knew that. Okay, Fools in April. I'm between a B and an A. I'm honestly probably going to put it right below Employee of the Month. I think it is a B. Again, SpongeBob is a bit annoying in the beginning. I get it, to Squidward. Not so much to the audience, but to Squidward. And call me sulking and stuff like that. But Squidward's prank was kind of too far. I know a lot of people think, oh, it was just a joke on Squidward's end, but I don't know. I just find it too mean-spirited, and how hard is it to say I'm sorry? Like, it becomes cringeworthy how hard it is for Squidward to say sorry. Like, I don't know. Fools in April has some good jokes in it and stuff like that, but it's not one of my favorites. Frankendoodle is next. Frankendoodle is going to get an S tier. I think I'm going to put it at the bottom of S tier, but still, Frankendoodle is an absolute awesome episode. This has some of the most quotable lines in the entire series, especially from Patrick, when he goes, "Where's the leak, ma'am?" and "Finland!" I also love the design of Doodle Bob basically coming to life and wreaking freaking havoc around SpongeBob and Patrick. And the fact that he has one arm to just draw himself all back together and get revenge on SpongeBob. This is a classic episode and is absolutely getting an S. Fun. I'm going to put towards the top of A. I think it's a really amazing episode, but there's one little problem I have with it. I guess you can say it's kind of Plankton leading on SpongeBob to believe that they're friends, and I know they're not supposed to be friends, but I think they could have executed that a little better. But other than that, this is the episode with the fun song. What else can I say? Gary Takes a Bath is going to get an A too. Towards the bottom of A, I'll put it in between As Seen on TV and Club SpongeBob. Gary Takes a Bath is freaking hilarious. Absolutely. Especially the scene where SpongeBob is yelling at Gary not to go towards the mud puddle and basically treating him like he's a disrespectful kid. "Do not go near that mud puddle. Gary the snail, I am talking to you. You go down by that mud puddle. I'm going to count to 3. What else can I say? And the whole scene where he basically floods the house with him absorbing the bath water. But my favorite moments are towards the beginning of the episode where SpongeBob is trying to convince Gary to take a bath. I love the scene where he's like, "I got a crisp $1 bill for anyone willing to take a bath in this house," and Mr. Krabs is in the bathtub and just basically drives by him and steals the dollar. That's a classic. Gary Takes a Bath is a classic episode, but I guess you could say it's a little bit of annoyance with Gary kind of taunting SpongeBob, so I won't put it at S, but it's a really good episode. Grandma's Kisses. It's definitely one of the lower episodes so far. I'll put it... I'm honestly going to put it as the second weakest episode so far. Grandma's Kisses is just... It's good, it's funny. I especially love the scenes when Patrick acts like a baby and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just a lot of it has cringy humor. You know what? I honestly think this is the weakest episode so far, and I'm going to put it in C. A lot of it just doesn't work for me, and the tantrum SpongeBob throws at the end is the worst part of the episode. It's honestly, for Pre Movie SpongeBob, it's really annoying. So, I'm putting Grandma's Kisses in C. I think it's the weakest episode. So, I don't think it's the worst episode of the Pre Movie era, but it's among the worst episodes. Graveyard Shift, though, is among the best episodes. I am going to put it right below Band Geeks. What a freaking classic. The whole story of the hash-slinging slasher to all the ways to tell how the hash-slinging slasher is coming. And of course, oh boy, 3 a.m. I mean, Patrick waking up at 3 in the morning to eat a Krabby Patty is classic for everything. What else can I say? Graveyard Shift is a absolute banger of an episode. Hall Monitor. Alright, Hall Monitor to me is in the A tier. I'm going to put it in between Bubble Buddy and Arg. I think this episode is really funny, especially after SpongeBob gets in the papers that there's a maniac across town trying to basically wreak havoc. And then SpongeBob and Patrick trying to go after him until they realize SpongeBob was the actual maniac for going into the open window in those fish's house. You know what I'm saying. I love the scene where Patrick comes up with the idea for them to go get ice cream. But my favorite scene is wee woo, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. Hall Monitor is freaking incredible. What else can I say? Help Wanted. Help Wanted I actually think is a good episode, but maybe a little bit overrated. I'm going to put it at the bottom of A. I think it's the episode that started it all, so you got to give it some credit. I don't think it's as funny as a lot of the later episodes, even the later episodes of season 1, but it's still classic, especially living in the sunlight, in the moonlight, have I wonderful. Tiny Tim's song is glued to this episode forever. That's what I'll always remember for this episode. It's the very first episode of the series, and it is a classic. Home Sweet Pineapple. I'm gonna put right above Dumped. I think it's another classic episode. Aw, dang nematodes. From the nematodes eating SpongeBob's house to Squidward just freaking celebrating that SpongeBob is moving out of the neighborhood. This episode is hilarious in all sorts of ways. What else can I say? Yeah, I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker now because this video is probably going to be like 200-300 minutes if I'm not. So, Hooky. Hooky is going to go, I think, in the 8th. I'll put it in S. Honest, is this the first season 1 episode in S? Yes, it is. Holy crap. This is the first season 1 episode in S. I'm putting it at the bottom of S, but still, this is one of my favorite episodes of season 1. The peer pressure on Patrick for SpongeBob to use the hooks is just freaking hilarious. To Mr. Krabs warning them that they're going to be in a gift shop and in a tuna can covered with mayonnaise. Oh my god, this is just such a classic episode. Alright, I'm going to cut it here for this part of the video. We will return with the eyes in 1 second. Alright, I'm with Stupid. Worst episode so far. Patrick is just a prick in this episode. After all SpongeBob is trying to do to help him with his parents thinking he's dumb and stuff like that, I don't know. Patrick is just... This is by far the worst of Patrick in the pre-movie era. He's an unappreciative bastard in this episode, and really tough to say if this might be the worst pre-movie episode. I think there's one more I dislike more than this, but this is close to being the worst. I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. I'm gonna put it at the top of B. Whew! Oh, no. Oh, no. You're going later, and you're gonna be pretty good. No, I'm not Idiot Box, that's next. I'm gonna put it at the top of B for I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. I think Kevin the Sea Cucumber is a prick, but he gets his comeuppance in the end, and it's freaking hilarious to watch that. But I don't know, it's just... I find the episode a little bit cringeworthy. I don't really know what else to say. Idiot Box is going to be an S-tier episode. Come on. Imagination. And all the imagination SpongeBob and Patrick use in the box. Squidward basically tries to find out how they're using the box, and he gets so obsessed with it, like he does in a lot of the pre-movie episodes. I wish that dynamic would return, where Squidward is just... He acts like he doesn't like what SpongeBob and Patrick are doing at first until he gets so fascinated with it. I don't think we've seen that since, like, season 5. I think was the last time we kind of had an episode like that. Maybe even I remember there was a season 4 episode that was like that, but that dynamic is just gone now. I haven't seen the most recent episodes. I haven't watched the show consistently since like season 10. But anyways, we don't have time to waste, so I'll just say that Idiot Box is a classic episode. I Had an Accident is another classic. I really think I'm going to put it above Band Geeks. I'm serious. This is a freaking banger of an episode. My favorite part of the episode is the random ass ending with the gorilla. And he just rides away on his horse. Like, it's the most shocking what the fuck moment of the entire pre-movie era. But other than that, there's so many freaking good jokes in this episode. Mainly to do with SpongeBob's ways of how he gets along in life by just staying in his house. And then him going out of the house finally to save his friends and immediately being whacked with a paper. I Had an Accident is one of the best episodes of the entire series for me. Imitation Crabs, I'm going to put an A. This is the episode. No, I'm not putting it in S. I think it's really good, but not S tier. A tier. I'll put it here. I think this is a really good episode where Plankton disguises himself as a robot crabs to basically try to convince SpongeBob to give him the formula, but SpongeBob makes him go through hell to get it. And then the scene where SpongeBob tries to reveal who the real Mr. Krabs is, and I think the highlight of the entire episode. This episode is awesome. I love it. I Was a Teenage Gary, not so much. I'll put it at the top of C, but it's definitely a C tier episode. It's just weird. Like, it's got some funny moments, but Squidward just denying Gary of food and stuff like that. Like, he's not that much of an idiot and not that much of a grouch. So Squidward is honestly kind of out of character in this episode, and it's hard to see Gary so hungry and thirsty that he looks like he's dying. This is really not a good episode. It's one of the weakest of the pre-movie era. Jellyfish Hunter, I think is an A tier. I initially thought this was one of the top 10 episodes. I don't quite think it's a top 10 anymore. It's a really good episode, especially when the salesmen try to sell SpongeBob their items, and I don't know. It's a hilarious episode. I like the whole no-name SpongeBob relationship in the episode, and Mr. Krabs getting his comeuppance in the end for basically running a jellyfish farm. This is one of Mr. Krabs' worst, which is kind of why I don't put it in S, but it's still a really good episode. Jellyfishing is going to get a B. I don't know. I don't think it's a great episode because this, I think, is the very first time that SpongeBob and Patrick kind of torture Squidward a little bit. So, I don't know. It's just not one of my favorites. Jellyfish Jam. Man, this episode has a bopper of a song, but the episode itself, I'd still put it in B. Top of B, but it's still a B. I don't know. I kind of feel like Squidward is unnecessarily tortured in this episode. He's just trying to get some sleep, and the jellyfish are blaring their music for 18 hours and stuff like that. I know it annoys SpongeBob too, but the jellyfish are they're unpleasant. Just One Bite, I'm going to put it at the bottom of S. Really good episode. So meme-worthy, especially the scene where SpongeBob goes, "You like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward?" This is the episode with the deleted scene that was deleted because of what happened in 2001. And it's basically the scene where the security system is, "This isn't water, this is gas." Yeah, you don't see that on the episodes now because it was deleted because of the 9/11 attacks. And what am I trying to say? It's a classic episode, though. Squidward is just petty, thinking, "Oh, I don't like Krabby Patties," until he actually tries it, but he doesn't want to admit it to SpongeBob, so he's like, "This is the worst thing I've ever tasted." But then he just can't help but try to sneak one. It's just proof that Squidward is a flawed character, but has a good heart in the end. Karate Choppers. I think Karate Choppers is a great episode. I do. I'm going to put it in towards the bottom of A, but it's still a good episode. The best part of the episode is everything after he gets fired and the whole karate chopping their picnic thing. I like that scene. But my favorite scene is the very end where it's like, "I love karate. I love money. I hate all of you." Karate Choppers is a classic episode. Crabborg. Crabborg is going to go in B. Towards the top of B, though. I think it's a really good it's a good episode. It's a good episode, but, like, I don't know what you'd call it. Crabborg, to me, sort of just feels maybe like a little bit of a Mr. Krabs torture episode, I guess you could say. I don't know. I feel like Mr. Krabs gets unnecessarily tortured in this episode just because SpongeBob is too much of an idiot to realize that robots aren't real in that universe, which technically they are. I mean, look at Crabborg, but yeah, Crabborg is not, or was that his name? Crabborg is the name of the episode, but I'm talking about imitation crabs. Look at imitation crabs. Crabborg is getting a B. Krabbyland is getting a C. I think behind Jellyfish Jam, this is the worst of Mr. Krabs in the pre-movie era. But the episode is so funny with Jellyfish, or not Jellyfish Jam, Jellyfish Hunter. Jellyfish Hunter is just so hilarious that I have to put it in A. There's nothing really funny about Krabbyland. I mean, SpongeBob tortures himself to entertain the kids. That's not really funny. I don't really find Squidward even that funny, but Mr. Krabs is the worst part of this episode. He should have been put in freaking prison after this episode, basically trying to steal from kids and scam little kids just to get their money. I'm glad he gets his comeuppance in the end, but this is really bad for Mr. Krabs, so I gotta put it at C, and nothing's really funny about the episode. Krusty Love is gonna go in B. I'll probably put it right around the middle of B. I think there are some very funny jokes in this episode, but it is bought down a little bit by Mr. Krabs' attitude towards SpongeBob for me. Basically treating him like shit. "Oh, I want this for Mrs. Puff. Stop it, boy, you're wasting me money." It's one of those episodes, and it's just, it's hard to watch. Krusty Krab training video. Like I said, this is going to go high. It's not my absolute favorite so far, but I think I'm willing to put it right below I Had an Accident and above Band Geeks. This episode just has such a neat formula to it where it's a training video for the Krusty Krab. All the classic jokes. My favorite scene is the whole scene where Patrick enters the Krusty Krab and is like, I'll have I mean, what else can I say? Everyone agrees Krusty Krab training video is one of the best episodes of the whole show. Life of Crime. Life of Crime is going to go in A and towards the top of A. Not the absolute top, but towards the top. This is the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick steal a balloon, but it's actually Free Balloon Day, so it's okay. They think they're criminals for stealing the balloon, and they flee town. The whole scene where Patrick thinks SpongeBob stole his candy bar is kind of what brings this episode down slightly, but, I mean, it's not the annoying type of Patrick like you'd see in I'm With Stupid or something like that. So, yeah, I'm gonna put this episode in A. It's an absolute banger. Alright, we're on to the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes now. Alright, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. I think 3 is first? Yeah, 3. 3 is the episode with Man Ray, and it's not my favorite. I'd say it's in the middle of the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy pre-movie episode, so I'll put it in A. I'll put it above Life of Crime. I do think it's an awesome episode. But the best parts of the episode are towards the beginning, because once Man Ray gets out of the Mermalayer, it just becomes a little bit cringeworthy, I guess you can... I don't know. Man Ray on his own, I think he needed SpongeBob and Patrick in the episode to have the perfect comedy duo. It was them in the Mermalayer the entire episode. Like, the entire thing was about them training him not to be bad, but at the very end it's the twist that he never changed and stuff like that. I guess you could say... Then I might have said this is my favorite Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode, but I gotta put 2 of the episodes above this one because of the end of the episode. But still, 3 is a classic. This is 2. 2 is probably my least favorite Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode. I'll put it in between Doing Time and Big Pink Loser. It's my least favorite because of one moment, actually. It's when Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy try to abandon SpongeBob. I mean, I know they don't like SpongeBob and stuff like that, but it's kind of out of character for them. Not so much Barnacle Boy, but Mermaid Man, I guess you can say. And I don't know. I feel like them abandoning him in the end when they promised to give him a day out is kind of uncalled for. And it's just not as funny as the other Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes, so I'll put it in B. This one is 4. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4 is one of my favorites. It's one of my 2 favorites. Put it at the very top of A. This is the episode where SpongeBob gets Mermaid Man's belt, and all the hijinks that ensue with that are freaking classic. There's not a heck of a lot I can complain about in this episode. I guess what I could say is it's kind of unjustified for them to beat SpongeBob up for what's mostly an accident. In the beginning, it's kind of a little bit irresponsible of SpongeBob, but SpongeBob didn't mean to shrink everyone, and then beating him up over that, kind of a little uncalled for, but it's funny, actually. It's actually done funny. So I will put this at the very top of A. It's a classic. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy is my second to least favorite of the 5 Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy pre-movie episodes. I'll actually put it right above 2. It's my second least favorite because I don't know. It's the beginning of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy and stuff like that, but still, I guess you can say it's not as funny as the later episodes, outside of 2. It does have a few funny jokes, especially when SpongeBob is like, oh my, this purse is big and heavy, and then Patrick tries to steal it. What am I trying to say? There's some funny jokes in this episode, but not too memorable. Last but not least is my favorite Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. This is the episode where Mermaid Man, or Barnacle Boy, turns into a villain and goes on to the dark side, and this is like the Avengers, I guess you can say, of the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes, wherever all the characters basically come together to become individual heroes and stop this gang of villains. It's the perfect commemoration and the perfect final episode of the pre-movie era for Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and I think it's my favorite because of that. There's not really anything that fails about this episode, too. I think it's a perfect S-tier episode. Midlife Crustacean. Excuse me. I'll put it an A. I really like it. I think I like it more than most people do. I don't think it's the greatest episode of all time because SpongeBob and Patrick get slightly annoying in this episode, but I mean, there's so many classic moments in this episode, especially why the episode was banned, the panty raid. That's freaking hilarious. But Midlife Crustacean to me is a little bit better than a lot of people like it, but I don't know. It does have SpongeBob and Patrick being a little bit annoying. Missing Identity. I'm also going to put it at an A. I'm going to put it towards the bottom of A, though. I'll put it in between Home Sweet Pineapple and Dumped. Missing Identity is... It's a really good episode. I love the whole adventure SpongeBob goes through to try to remember how he remembered his identity. I won't put it in S because the scene where it basically repeats his entire daily routine multiple times throughout the episode gets a bit redundant. But I still think it's a really good episode, especially... I Sponge Boom, Sponge Boom. That scene always gives me a chuckle. Also about Buff Pants. I think it's one of the weaker pre-movie episodes. I'll put it in B still because I think I'll put it in C. Yeah, there's funny moments in this episode, but I don't know. I find it to be... This may sound silly, but a little too competitive. And SpongeBob is basically kind of tortured in this episode to the point where he becomes a little bit of a self-centered prick, but it's kind of by the peer pressure of Sandy, and he's the ultimate one who gets punished in the end, so not a huge fan of this one. My Pretty Seahorse. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, honestly, but it does have a few really funny jokes. One of the jokes in this episode is related to one of my most viewed videos on my channel, which is my reaction to a Pal for Carrie where Squidward's crying at the onions and going, "Would you get out of here?" But on the whole, most of the episode is not that funny. I'll put it at the very bottom of B, because you know what? It does have that Squidward moment. The moments with the onions are hilarious. The moment where Scooter shoves the coin inside of the seahorse, it's pretty inappropriate, but when Mystery kicks the living shit out of him, it's freaking hilarious. But most of the episode is not that funny to me. Nasty Patty. Now this one's good. I'll put it in S. I'll put it in between Frankendoodle and Hooky. This episode is a classic. It's about the health inspector coming to the Krusty Krab, but a fly crawls down his throat and chokes him, but they think because of the Nasty Patty SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs made is why he died. And they have... It's such a dark episode that it's freaking classic because of that. I think of this as the best example of the darkest pre-movie SpongeBob episode. Basically about Krabs and SpongeBob trying to hide a dead body. That's so dark for a kid's show, and that's what makes it classic. Nature Pants. One of my lesser favorites of the pre-movie era, but I still think it's a good episode. I don't like how obsessive Patrick is about trying to get SpongeBob back, and SpongeBob is kind of an idiot in this episode compared to how he normally is in the pre-movie. I mean, he's not the smartest person, but he's still way smarter than this. Living with the jellyfish, mostly he knows that's kind of stupid, and his intelligence is just brought down here, I guess you could say. I mean, and there's not that many funny jokes in this episode. The very beginning is funny when the kitchen in the Krusty Krabs lights on fire and the fireman goes, woo, 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 but definitely one of my lesser favorites. Naughty Nautical Neighbors is going to go... I think I'm going to put it in A. Right around here. Naughty Nautical Neighbors is a funny episode. It absolutely is. But Squidward trying to break SpongeBob and Patrick up at Friends is a little harsh. But all the scenes of SpongeBob and Patrick's competitiveness to be a better friend of Squidward is really hilarious. And especially the Solitude in E minor scene is classic. What else can I say? Neptune Spatula. Not a huge fan. I'll put it in between Born Again Krabs and My Pretty Seahorse. Just, I don't know. I feel like the beginning is really funny, but then it becomes a little bit boring and jerk-ass towards the end of the episode by certain characters. It's very out of character for Mr. Krabs for the pre-movie era, where basically he cries about SpongeBob leaving because he lost a bet. I don't know. Definitely one of my least favorites of the pre-movie era. New Student Starfish, A. Towards the top of A, too. Actually, you know what? I'll put it at the bottom of S. I really love this episode. I think it's... I mean, the 24 and 25 joke in this episode is classic. I don't like how Patrick tries to get SpongeBob in trouble. It's kind of why I put it towards the bottom of S, but there's just so many funny classic jokes in this episode, like Big Fat Meanie and stuff like that, that this episode goes in S tier. You can't put it anywhere else. No Free Rides, A. And towards the top of A. This is the episode where basically Mrs. Puff has finally just had it with SpongeBob and just automatically passes him. But then she realized the precautions of that he's going to be a menace to society by not really getting his boating license properly. So, in that case, she tries to steal his boat back. And the whole scene of them together with SpongeBob thinking she's a thief and trying to stop her, but he gets trapped by educational television and cheese graters, and I'm rambling on. A tier episode, I won't put it in S because it's a bit irresponsible of Mrs. Puff what she does, but I mean, come on, you can't flaw these episodes too much. Most of these are classics. No weenies allowed. S, 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 S. You're going down, Tubby. Tubby. Nobody calls me Tubby. There's that. There's the scene where he goes to Weenie Hut Junior's and gets called a weenie by the robot waiter. All of the different schemes of him trying to get into the Salty Splatoon. No weenies allowed is just a freaking classic. It has to be an S tier. So does One Crab's Trash. One Crab's Trash is actually gonna go right below Band Geeks. This episode is classic in my opinion. It's all about Mr. Krabs giving SpongeBob this rare hat, and he realizes how rare that hat is, so he tries to steal it back from SpongeBob any way he can. But then SpongeBob gives it to his rightful owner, and Mr. Krabs' adventure through the graveyard in this episode is so freaking epic. This episode is one of the best of the series in my opinion. Opposite Day. Good episode. I'm going to put it towards the bottom of A. The best part of the episode is SpongeBob disguising himself as Squidward, trying to give the real estate agent a tour of his home and stuff like that, and it basically gets Squidward to not move, which is kind of why I don't put it in an S, but it's a good episode. Party Pooper Pants. Not Patty Hype. Party Pooper Pants. I think is one of the worst episodes of the pre-movie era. I do have some nostalgia with this episode, but the older I get, the more I realize this episode is just SpongeBob at his worst, and he's just such a, you're right, party pooper. He's a party pooper. He's trying to ruin everybody's fun by trying to stay on schedule. And I get it. Sometimes you just want to stay on schedule. But SpongeBob takes it way too far. And it's just, it's to the point of nonsense. And the Patchy segments are probably the worst Patchy segments of the pre-movie era. So to me, Party Pooper Pants goes at C. Okay, so we're going to go to Patty Hype next, which is going to get an A, towards the top of A. This episode has some of the best classic lines and some of the best memes. My favorite part of the episode is when the TV commercial for the Pretty Patties comes on and it shows SpongeBob just burning, saying he's going to burn money and shred money. But then he just decides to give it all away. So Mr. Krabs comes and tries to take SpongeBob's business, give him the Krusty Krab, but it turns out Pretty Patties were pretty much a disaster. And then Mr. Krabs is the one that gets in trouble. I do feel like it's a little bit of SpongeBob's fault. So that's why I'll put it in A, because SpongeBob doesn't really get punished. And honestly, this is one of the few times where Mr. Krabs should be punished. He tricked SpongeBob and stuff like that. But I think SpongeBob maybe should have gotten a little bit of punishment too, because he's the one. But he did. I don't know. I'm not going to put an S tier. Pickles. I think this episode has funny moments. It's the introduction of Bubble Bass, and really the only Bubble Bass-centered episode in the pre-movie era. They take them a little too far, but I will put it in A. I think it's a funny episode, especially the scenes where Mr. Krabs tries to train SpongeBob again on how to make a Krabby Patty. From the point where he enters his house, and his house is a mess and stuff like that, to the point where they return to the Krusty Krab is, I think, the highlight of the episode. But, I don't know. I guess you can say SpongeBob wouldn't forget the Krabby Patty secret formula just randomly. So that's why I'm putting it at A and not S. Pizza delivery. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah. No. Yeah, I like Cookie more. I'm sorry to all the Season 1 fans who think this is definitively the best episode of Season 1. It's your opinion, and I respect that, but I have to disagree. I still think it's an S tier episode. It's a freaking classic, but Hooky to me, I think, is the highlight of season 1, in my opinion. Pizza Delivery is nothing but a classic. Every stretch of the imagination. Hooky is just amazing. Why am I talking about Hooky? Pizza Delivery is just a classic. From SpongeBob delivering the pizza, to the Krusty Krab pizza song, to them acting like pioneers. But the best part of the episode is Squidward delivering justice to SpongeBob and slamming that pizza into that jerk-ass's face. That's just so satisfying to watch. Yeah, Pizza Delivery is an S-tier episode, absolutely. Plankton is not, but I think it's A-tier. I'll put it in between As Seen on TV and Gary Takes a Bath. I think Plankton is a very good episode. My favorite scene is when Plankton puts on his record player and he actually plays the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C. When he meant to play his evil music. That's a funny scene. And this is my lab, when it's a Labrador Retriever instead of a laboratory, and then he just says, "This is my laboratory." That's funny. It's not as funny as a lot of the absolute classics, but I still think it's an A-tier episode. Plankton's Army, putting at the very top of A. No, I think it's S. I can't really name anything wrong with this episode. I just think the other S-tier episodes are a little bit funnier. So Plankton's Army's going in S. I think it's a wonderful episode. I will say it is my least favorite of the S-tier episodes so far, but that twist in the end, where he tricks Plankton into thinking that the Krabby Patty's secret formula is plankton? And it's kind of poetic justice, because this is the last Plankton versus Krabs episode of the pre-movie era. So I think if SpongeBob ended with Season 3, this would have been the perfect finale to their rivalry behind the movie. Because that's just freaking shocking. Letting Plankton think the formula's made of plankton? That's a good way to keep him away forever. That's my favorite part of the episode, that whole twist. It's awesome. Alright, we're getting pretty close now. We're more than halfway through, I think. There's a lot of S-lettered episodes, though. So I think once we get to R, I think we're going to take our last break, and then R through Y is going to be the rest of the video. Because I gotta go to the bathroom and stuff like that and take a break. But we'll do the rest of the P's. Pranks a Lot. Pranks a Lot is a good episode. I love SpongeBob and Patrick turning into ghosts and stuff like that and tricking off Bikini Bottom. And unlike most episodes, I think the comeuppance SpongeBob and Patrick get at the end is actually good. They deserve it. They tricked the entire Bikini Bottom, and the prank at the end where they're basically live nudes is hilarious. I don't know. I really like this episode. I think I'll actually put it at the top of A. I mean it. This is a really funny episode. My only slight problem with the episode is that I guess you could say it's that it's just not quite as funny as the S-tier episodes. It's memorable, but it's not as purely... It's funny, but it's not as funny as the S-tier episodes. Pre-hibernation week. A. I think it's a really funny episode, especially the scene of Sandy trying to go on the lookout for SpongeBob after he runs away. That's the best part of the episode. Especially, hey SpongeBob! Well, at least I still have my personality. Classic episode. I do think Sandy tortures SpongeBob a little bit too much, so I will not put it at S. But it's an A. Pressure. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. We're gonna put pressure. Put it in B, actually. I'm not a gargantuan. It's a good episode, but I'm not a gargantuan fan of it. I think the rivalry between the sea creatures and Sandy is a little bit competitive, and it gets a little tiny bit too mean-spirited for my likings. But I mean, the whole scene of the sea creatures going on dry land is freaking classic. And there's a lot of funny moments. Pressure's going in top of B, though. Last for this round, and the last before the final round of episodes is going to be procrastination, which I'm going to put in A. I love the scene, especially SpongeBob's nightmare where he imagines his couch talking to him because he's just so freaking tired from doing this essay. This episode is more than anything relatable, especially if you procrastinate, which sometimes I absolutely do, and I'm ashamed of it, but it's what happens. This episode is so relatable if you're a procrastinator. I mean, come on. Procrastination is so relatable. I'm putting it in an A. Alright, one last round. Okay, ours. We're gonna go pretty quickly now, so let's start. Reef Blower. I think it's pretty fair to put it in a B. Really nothing to this episode. It's got some funny visual gags and stuff like that, but it's a dead silent episode and not what am I trying to say? It's not one of the funniest, so with that, I'll actually put it on the lower part of B. It's not one of my favorites. Ripped Pants, an S tier episode. I'll put it right around there. I want to make sure it's in the top 10, right? Yeah, it's in the top 10. Okay, yeah, it's definitely in my top 10 episodes. Ripped Pants is one of the best of season 1. In fact, I would actually say, I think it is my favorite of season 1. I know I said Hooky was a close contender, but I actually think Ripped Pants is one of the earliest episodes of the show, and it's just perfect. Everything from SpongeBob's gags with him ripping his pants to where it eventually the joke gets old and it gets on everybody's nerves until he pretends to die, and then it's not a joke anymore. Nobody finds him funny, so he has to redeem himself. It's a good storyline that I think is just freaking classic. Ripped Pants is going in S tier. Rockabye Bivalve is going to go in A tier. I think this is a very funny episode. I do think Patrick being an irresponsible father is funny while kind of annoying at the same time. So that's why I'm not putting this episode in S, but I still think it's an awesome episode. My favorite gag in the episode is when they're trying to find out what to feed Junior, and then SpongeBob pulls out an apple and, of course, scallops love worms. Wait, we will bury you. That is my favorite gag in the entire episode. And what can I say? Rockabye Bivalve is a very good episode. So is Rock Bottom. I'm putting it towards the... I'm putting a little more season 1 in S than I thought. I will put it below Hooky, though. Really tough to tell if I like Rock Bottom or Pizza Delivery more. I think I'll actually put it... Yeah, I'll put it around there at the bottom of the season 1 S tier episodes, but it's still one of the best of season 1 in my opinion. I think this episode it's hilarious, but my favorite part of this episode is all the visuals with all the weird creatures and stuff like that. It's so freaking fascinating. And this is my favorite animation in all of season 1, just seeing... I'm really impressed with the animation and visuals with this episode. It's one of the most visually impressive episodes of all of the series. So, I love it. Sailor Mouth, another S. I'll put it right above Frankendoodle. This episode is hilarious. From the Eels and Escalators game to all the different sounds they use to censor the swear words. This episode, come on. It's the episode that almost got banned and stuff like that, but it's... We are gonna tell your mom, Mr. Krabs. No, please, not me, mommy. I could name so many jokes from this episode that are just freaking classic. Sailor Mouth, what an awesome episode. Sandy's Rocket is not. Okay, can I ask why... You gotta go up there, see. That was strange for a second. Okay. If you heard that, that's Luna. Luna's kind of anxious right now because Ellie's at the vet. And, she's getting checked on and stuff like that. And, she's nervous, so she is barking and stuff like that. So if you hear barking, that's just Luna. She's alright, though. C tier, we're gonna put it... Might be my least favorite episode, so if I don't really like Sandy's Rocket... Yeah, I think it's my least favorite episode so far. Do you see something, Luna? Oh, man. Alright, I might have to pause yet again. Sandy's Rocket is my least favorite episode so far on the list. Yeah, I just... Nothing really makes me laugh about it. I find SpongeBob and Patrick to just be downright prickish. And... I mean... What can I say? I don't like this episode very much. Okay, I'm gonna go see what's wrong with Luna. I'll be back. Okay, Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm is next. Not one of my favorite episodes, I'll be honest. I will put it in B only for the Alaskan bullworm joke. But other than that, there's just not a heck of a lot likable about this episode, and it's pretty forgettable, so... I definitely think it's one of the weaker episodes of the pre-movie era. SB129 is not. This is absolute classic. I forgot. Season 1 has a lot of bangers, actually. Not as many as seasons 2 and 3, but... I think... Season 1 has a fair amount of bangers, more than I thought it would. Yeah, I'll put this in between Ripped Pants and I don't know, right behind Ripped Pants. You know what, I think Ripped Pants is the peak of season 1, but SB129's a close second. Come on, it's the episode where Squidward goes into the freaking future and meets Spongetron and stuff like that. And then he goes to the past, and of course the epic SpongeBob Caveman meme is born from this episode. But my favorite scene is when he goes to the void where he's all alone, but he's really not alone because he hears all these voices going, alone, 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 and alone. What else can I say? SB129, what a classic. Scaredy Pants, I'm going to put towards the top of A. You know what? What's my reason for not putting this in S? I really thought that. I was just like... there's no reason why I wouldn't put an S. I like mostly everything about this episode. From SpongeBob initially being uh scaring absolutely nothing to being a scaredy pants to towards the end of the episode, he got his ultimate goal of scaring everybody. Basically, it's showing his brain and stuff like that. So this is a great Halloween special. What else can I say? Shanghai. Shanghai is a good episode. Very good. But I think it's towards the bottom of A. I do think it is an A tier episode. I think it's awesome. I especially love when the Flying Dutchman throws Squidward through the fly of despair and stuff like that. And the perfume department. I won't put it in S because I'm not a fan of the Patchy segments here. Not my least favorite of the pre-movie seasons, but they're not as good as Christmas Who's or even the Sponge Who Could Fly's Patchy segments, but yeah, I'm just not really a fan of the Patchy segments. Sleepy Time. Sleepy Time is going to go towards the top of A. I have a lot of fun with this episode. SpongeBob just going through everyone's dreams and all the unique dreams that they do. This is another one of my favorite episodes in terms of the animation. They go so many places in this episode that it just fascinates me. And then everyone gets annoyed and comes to SpongeBob's Pineapple when they're all like, stay out of our dreams. And then, does anybody have a quarter? That's my favorite joke of the episode. Patrick with his quarter for his mechanical horse, basically. This classic episode. Snowball Effect, another good one. Another really good one. A tier. Snowball Effect is not as good as Christmas Who in terms of a winter-themed episode, but I'd say it's definitely pretty close. There's actually probably 20, 30 episodes in between them, but you know what? It's a really good winter-themed episode. And now that it's around Christmas time now, perfect time to watch this episode. What's that and what's this? We're gonna put these down around here. Something smells. Something, holy crap, we still go, oh my god. S has got to be the number one letter for episodes, because we still have like 7 or 8 S episodes still. Something Smells is an S tier episode, by the way. I'll put it in between Frankendoodle and Sailor Mouth. What else can I say? This episode is just freaking hilarious. From what am I trying to say? From SpongeBob eating his peanut onion sundae to him thinking that everyone thinks he's ugly when he's just got a smelly breath. That's why no one wants to be around him. And my favorite part of the episode, weirdly, is when Patrick enters SpongeBob's Pineapple and asks if he's got bath beads, to going down his hallway and he's just playing creepy music. I didn't expect that as a kid, so that always made me laugh. This is a classic episode. SpongeBob Meets the Strangler is an A tier episode. This episode is really hilarious, especially once the Strangler becomes SpongeBob's bodyguard. He gets tortured a little bit, but come on, he's pretty much a murderer, so of course you don't mind seeing him get tortured. And then my favorite part of the episode is when he's just finally had it with SpongeBob and tries to run away from him, but SpongeBob is by his bodyguard's side all the time, and it's freaking hilarious. Sponge Guard on Duty. High B. I think it's a good episode, especially the first few jokes where Patrick checks his bottom. But of course, the best joke in the episode is, dude, put that thing away. There's like children here. This is the classic episode. This one's not. Do you guys want to know my least favorite episode of the pre-movie era? Out of every episode, my least favorite pre-movie episode is Squeaky Boots. Guys, this episode is not as bad as A Pal for Gary or like Pet Sitter Pat or something like that. But I would argue this episode is seriously, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, I might consider this worse than any episode of Season 4 or even Season 5. I don't know about 5. 5 has some pretty bad episodes. But I think this episode is worse than any episode in Season 4. Yes, even Good Neighbors, which I don't think is a good episode. It would probably be in the bottom 5 in the pre-movie era for me. But this episode, it just annoys the shit out of me. The squeaking boots, I can't freaking stand it. Nothing really makes me laugh in this episode. I think Krabs is just a selfish prick through and through throughout the entire thing. Squeaky Boots is just, it's the only pre-movie episode I downright dread watching. And I'm like, oh no, not this episode. I only really get that way with episodes from like... The next episode that made me feel that way after this is To Love a Patty. That is Season 5. So they went through a good streak to have an episode worse than this. I do not like this episode at all, and I think it is by far the worst pre-movie episode. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but it's the only pre-movie episode I can't stand. We're having updates for Ellie now, so I'm gonna have to keep checking in and out for now. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, Roo, let's finish up this video. Okay, so we left off on Squid's Day Off, which I'm gonna put at the very bottom of the S tier. Come on. Errands. Have you finished those errands? I don't like it quite as much as the other S tiers episodes, but this episode is just so frigging memorable that I have to put it in S tier. It's basically about Squidward getting to be in charge of the Krusty Krab all day, but SpongeBob basically makes him go all paranoid and stuff like that. So, Squid's Day Off, awesome episode. Squid on Strike. Did we pick it up? Oh, what happened to it? Where are you, Squid on Strike? You're not D tier, I guarantee you that. You're not as bad as Squeaky Boots. You're not on C tier. I will actually put you in the A tier. I was initially going to put this episode in the B tier, but I actually rewatched this episode the other day, and I really liked it a lot more than I thought I did. I like how the SpongeBob is so naive that he can be convinced by Squidward to strike over his job, and then Mr. Krabs is just willing to downright fire him for that. There's a bunch of funny moments, especially when SpongeBob finally strikes and goes, "Mr. Krabs is unfair, standing at the oppression." What can I say? This episode is a freaking classic. It's not quite S tier for me because I just don't think it's as funny as the S tier episodes, but it does have 4 or 5 genuinely really funny moments. Squidville, I really like this episode, but I don't know. I don't know if I can put it in quite an S. I think it's a fantastic episode, but I do have a problem with it. My problem is the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick are a little bit annoying in this episode, especially towards the end when they just basically... I get that they're trying to apologize to Squidward and stuff like that, but I maybe wish it had a different ending where Squidward ended up going back to his old house and begging SpongeBob and Patrick to be annoying again, I guess you could say. So I just wish the ending was a little bit different. Other than that, I mean, it's a freaking classic. What else can I say? My favorite moment in the episode is the beginning when they're playing with the reef blower. I love this episode. Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, B. Towards the top of B, though. This is a good episode, but not a great one. I think Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost is brought down a little bit by Squidward kind of being a jerk, especially treating SpongeBob like a peasant, and basically makes him stand outside all night in the same position. But, I mean, come on. There's the scene where he's making SpongeBob and Patrick feed him, and then Patrick drops a giant watermelon in his mouth. It's a classic scene, but the rest of the episode, I think, is pretty good, but not as funny as the others, and Squidward's a little bit of a jerk. Squilliam Returns, I think I'll also place it in... I think I'll place it in A. This is the episode where it has one of my favorite Patrick lines in the entire series. It's when Patrick interrogates the coat hanger as the security guard. Are you gonna hand it over or not? Don't you backsass me! I mean, this episode is kind of like a sequel to Band Geeks, which is one of my top 10 favorite episodes of the entire show, as it should be. This is not quite as good as Band Geeks, as I think my one problem with the episode is I don't really like the ending, but other than that, this is a pretty freaking good sequel to Band Geeks. I like Squilliam and Squidward's rivalry coming back. I like the SS diarrhea joke. I like SpongeBob basically forgetting everything except fine dining. This episode is very good, but I'm not a huge fan of the ending, so I can't put it in S tier. Squirrel jokes. The older I get, the more I don't like this episode. I'm actually going to put it at the top of C. I'm not a huge fan of this episode. I think it's a little too mean-spirited. SpongeBob goes way too far. I get that he has pressure by the other fish in Bikini Bottom to make fun of Sandy, but that's one of his closest friends, and he's telling some pretty bad jokes. And it's not like it's too bad, but like, I don't know. I kind of feel like SpongeBob deserved what he got in this episode when Sandy basically became what her stereotypes were at the end of the episode. I think SpongeBob deserved what he got there, and I can't really put this episode above a C. I'm sorry. I'm not a huge fan of it. Suds, I think I'm between an A and an S. I really like this episode. This is one of the better episodes of season 1, in my opinion. I still am going to put it in A because I guess you could say it's Patrick I'm not a huge fan of in this episode. I think he's preventing SpongeBob from getting the care he deserves, and it's a little hard to watch, but I mean, it's classic still. My favorite scene in the episode is when Sandy and Patrick are fighting over what they're going to do with SpongeBob over his suds, and that's a funny scene and everything, but Patrick is a little bit of a jerk in this episode, so I'm actually going to lower the episode to a little bit of a lower A now that I think about it. I'll put it below Squid on Strike. I think this is a really good episode, but Patrick brings it down a little bit. Survival of the Idiots. Are you going to move Survival of the Idiots? Okay, apparently something happened there. S tier. I'm going to put it in the top 10, actually. I'm going to put it above Graveyard Shift, but below One Crab's Trash. Survival of the Idiots is a freaking classic. Everything from SpongeBob and Patrick entering Sandy's tree dome in the winter setting, to everything they do with the winter, to how they gotta get warm from ripping off Sandy's fur. But of course, the best part of the episode is the Dirty Dan scenes. I mean, it's some of the most quotable lines in the entire series. Survival of the Idiots absolutely makes the S tier, and it absolutely makes my top 10 of the entire series. Tea at the Tree Dome, one of the first 3 episodes of the entire show. I'm gonna put it towards the top of B. I think it's a good episode. I like that it introduces the friendship of SpongeBob and Sandy and stuff like that, but again, Patrick brings down this episode a little bit. I'm starting to realize Patrick is actually my favorite character in the entire show in the first 3 seasons. But he does bring down a fair amount of episodes in some of the weaker episodes of the pre-movie era. Such as I'm with Stupid, and actually Suds is probably in the top half of the pre-movie era for me, but he still brings it down a bit. Squirrel Jokes, he's a bit of a joke. I forgot to mention he's a bit of a joke. He's a bit of a jerk. But Tea at the Tree Dome might, behind I'm with Stupid, is probably his worst appearance in the pre-movie era. He basically gives SpongeBob the stupidest advice imaginable. But he is overall a good friend because he tries to save him in the end, but I don't know. Tea at the Tree Dome is not one of my favorites, but it's an alright episode. Texas. Texas is... I'm going to put it at the very bottom of A. I'm just going to say what saved this from being a B is the Texas song that Sandy sings. Wish I was back in Texas. The ocean's no place for a squirrel. If it wasn't for that one song, I think this honestly would have been a B tier episode. I think it's good. The rest of the episode is good, but that song is the highlight of the whole episode by far. I like the ending, though, where the Bikini Bottomites show how much they care about Sandy and stuff like that and want her to stay, so it's really sweet, but it's not one of my favorites. The Algae's Always Greener. We're getting on to the episodes now. The Algae's Always Greener is a great kickoff to Season 3, and I think I'm going to put it in the S tier. At the bottom, but I think it deserves an S tier. The Algae's Always Greener is a classic episode where basically Plankton wants to switch his life with Mr. Krabs, and by a machine he does so, and he gets to experience what it's like to be the boss of the Krusty Krab for a day. And what I love about this episode, my favorite scene is once Krabs enters the scene, and he's the villain trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula. And my favorite scene, good grief, he's naked! What else can I say? The Algae's Always Greener is a great kickoff to Season 3. The Bully. Actually, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move these 2 templates here to the bottom so we can focus on the rest of the episodes. The Bully. Bully is a great episode. I don't think it's quite a S tier, but I think it's a great episode. Flats the Flounder is a perfect antagonist to SpongeBob. He's just trying to kick his butt throughout the entire thing, and SpongeBob is so paranoid. Mrs. Puff, I think, is ultimately what brings this episode down. She's not a very good teacher in this episode, basically letting the bullying go on without too many precautions, but the bully is a mostly fantastic episode other than Mrs. Puff. My favorite part is the ending where it's basically revealed that SpongeBob is just sponge material, so his beating is basically nothing, which is freaking hilarious. So the bully is not quite an S tier, but the camping episode absolutely is and jumps in the top 10, right above One Crab's Trash. The camping episode, you all know, CMPFIRESONG song, CMPFIRESONG song. Yeah, I mean, campfire song. There's the whole scene where the sea bear beats the living shit out of Squidward. There's the scene where, Patrick spits the hot marshmallows in Squidward's face. I mean, this episode is a freaking classic. My favorite scene is the scene, I mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again. It's the scene where the sea bear beats the shit out of Squidward. It's just, Squidward got what he deserved, honestly. So, the camping episode is absolutely one of the top 10 best episodes of the entire show. I love it. Chaperone, it has good moments, but I don't think it's that great of an episode. I like the scene where SpongeBob is trying to get himself to be long, tan, and handsome, and he has trouble walking with his leg extenders and stuff like that, but there's not too much memorable about this episode. It's one of the least memorable episodes of the pre-movie era, so it's not an episode I'm a particular fan of, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Chaperone, honestly. The Fry Cook Games. The Fry Cook Games absolutely is an S tier. Probably lower S tier, but still, I can't name much wrong with this episode. The rivalry of SpongeBob and Patrick is actually fun in this episode. I love all the different games they play, especially the ending wrestling match, which is freaking hilarious. And of course, you cannot forget about My Name's Not Rick. This episode is an absolute classic. I don't like it quite as much as like the top 15, 16 episodes, but it's still an S tier episode. Great Snail Race, however, is not. I'm gonna put it. Whew. It's either my second or absolute least favorite episode of season 3. I think so. I think it's my least favorite of season 3. SpongeBob is such a jerk to Gary in this episode. Like, you can't help but feel horrible for him. Basically till Gary gets freaking sick. I don't like watching this episode at all. I think it has a few funny moments, especially with Patrick and Rocky, but other than that, not really one of my favorites. The Paper. I'm going to put it towards the bottom of B. Not a great episode in my opinion. I think it's a bit boring and not a lot happens, but it is simple enough to be kind of charming, and it does have funny moments in it. Especially the scene where SpongeBob is telling Squidward all the wrong notes he's playing, and then he plays the right notes with his paper. That's funny, but other than that, I'm not a huge fan of this episode, so I'm going to put it in B. Alright, we're down to one more row now. We're almost done with this list. Holy crap. This was a long one. The Secret Box. S tier, absolutely. Just outside of the top 10. Where's the top 10? We have... I'm going to put it just outside of the top 10. I think the top 10 starts with ripped pants, right? Yes. So number 11 is where I'm going to put the secret box. This is an absolute classic episode. Everything from the whole secret of the secret box to not even Squidward's house can look at Patrick's secret box. But my favorite scene is, of course, the ending where it's revealed that SpongeBob thinks it's just a string in his secret box, but Patrick really reveals that it's the embarrassing photo of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. Merry Christmas, SpongeBob! And how fitting, since it's now December when this video is being released right around Christmas time. But anyways, moving on from that, the secret box is a classic episode. Smoking Peanut is a really good episode. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think the Smoking Peanut is very good. I guess you can say the framing of Patrick was kind of unfair in this episode. There was really I guess you could say there was no really big hints that he did it over SpongeBob, but other than that, I do really like the episode. My favorite scene is when Patrick basically becomes Sherlock Holmes and goes on an investigation to find out who threw the peanut. I think this is a very funny episode, but it's not quite S tier for me. Sponge Who Could Fly. Perfect B tier episode. I'll put it right around the middle of B tier. I think it has some really good moments. For once, I will actually say the Patchy segments are probably the best part of the episode. What brings it down, though, in my opinion, is the Bikini Bottomites. They are horrible in this episode. SpongeBob is basically just trying to have the dream of flying, but they try to bring it down until they find out he's useful and they take advantage of him. But when SpongeBob says enough is enough, they try to attack him. That is wonderful, Bikini Bottomites. Screw you. Sponge Who Could Fly is a B tier episode. Ugh. Is this the last This is the last special on the list. Ugh, which is the SpongeBob Goes Prehistoric or SpongeBob SquarePants BC Before Comedy episode. Also B tier. I'll put it above the Sponge Who Could Fly, though. Ugh is an absolute... what am I trying to say? Ugh is not an absolute laugh fest or anything, but it's pretty good. My favorite scenes, again, are probably the Patchy scenes. I think this is some of the better Patchy scenes in the pre-movie era. But, to me, I guess you can say it gets a little bit boring. But I do like the whole discovering cooking montage they do in the SpongeBob segments. I think that's pretty cool, but other than that, I'm not a massive fan of this episode, so I'm going to put it in B. Valentine's Day. I'll put Valentine's Day in A tier. Which reminds me, I want to do a Willow and Luna Valentine's Day episode in Season 4 of Willow and Luna. But anyways, off topic. Let's get on topic. Valentine's Day is... It's a very good holiday special to celebrate the holiday of Valentine's Day. I love Patrick's rampage towards the end of the episode. I think it's absolutely hilarious, but it does get slightly cringeworthy towards the end, where I think he goes a little too far, but for the most part, I think it's funny. I don't know. I don't think it's quite S tier, but it's an A tier episode for me. Walking Small. I'll put it at the top of B. It has funny moments, especially the scene where all is revealed that Plankton was basically trying to take advantage of SpongeBob. And he goes, "You used me for land development. That wasn't nice." That's the most quotable line in the episode. I like how Plankton tries to get SpongeBob to be assertive, but I don't know. I think it's not as funny as the other episodes other than that, so I can't particularly put it high on the list, but it's B tier, and I'll put it at the top of B tier. Welcome to the Chum Bucket. I'm going to put Welcome to the Chum Bucket and the A tier, probably towards the middle. It's a really good episode. Of course, the This Kitchen's Not the Same Without You song is the highlight of the episode, but it also has other really funny scenes. My favorite scene is when, other than the song, is when Plankton replaces SpongeBob's brain and puts it in the robot, but it's just the same. The robot refuses to do anything, and Plankton goes, "What? What?" This is a really funny episode. I guess you can say it's not quite as funny as the S tier episodes, but I do think it's a really good episode. 3 episodes left. Wow. Okay, we have Wet Painters, Wormy, and Your Shoes Untied. Wet Painters. Wet Painters is going to go in the S tier. Absolutely. I think, again, just outside of the top 10. Wet Painters is a freaking classic. From the time cards they do, Patrick basically making fun of it, going, "Can you move it along? I'm running out of time cards." To, this is one of Patrick's best appearances in the entire series. I love when they blow up the bubble, and he's like, "Oh, I know, 2 giant paint bubbles. We have technology." Patrick's scenes in this episode are friggin' classic. But I think my favorite scene is the ending where Mr. Krabs finds out that they got paint on his millionth dollar, but he reveals it's no big deal. It's just washable with saliva, basically. But then he laughs so hard that he spreads saliva all over the room, and his paint job is all ruined, basically. Ending the episode. It's a classic, but I won't quite put it in the top 10. Wormy. Wormy is freaking creepy. I always found it creepy, especially the scene with the realistic butterfly basically trying to attack you. I think that's a really freaking creepy scene, but it's a really memorable episode other than that. It's an episode I'll always remember. I love how the Bikini Bottomites all panic over this little innocent butterfly chasing them. Like, what's it gonna do? It's not even poisonous or anything. So, I love this episode. I think it's an absolute classic, but don't call me a wuss. I'm not putting in an S, because by God, the butterfly is pretty scary. Alright, we're at the end. Here we go. At long last, the final episode we are ranking today is Your Shoes Untied. Bottom of S. That song, to me, is what gets this episode in the S tier. I love the ending song. You make a loop-de-loop and pull, and your shoes are looking cool. But everything leading up to it is also really good. I love the scene where SpongeBob is tripping on his shoelaces to work. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. And then there's all the scenes of SpongeBob trying to convince everyone to tie his shoes, but nobody else really knows how to. And then the Flying Dutchman comes there, basically shows him how to tie knots, but oh, I can't forget how he asked, "Doesn't anybody know how to tie a knot?" And, well, the Flying Dutchman teaches him to tie knots, but not his shoelaces. And then we get to the song, and Gary is ultimately the one who shows him how to tie his shoes. This is a classic episode. I think it's great. Alright, wow, we're done. We ranked all 117 pre-movie SpongeBob episodes. Initially, this was going to be a ranking, but I don't think my skills are quite ready for that yet. Maybe in the future, we will redo this in like maybe 2025 or something and actually do the ranking. But for now, we're going to do this as a tier list. My DreamWorks ranking, I'm sorry, is a little late. It'll be coming out pretty soon, probably next week or the week after. I just need a little more prep time for that, but that's definitely coming out. But let's get on to the top 10 best pre-movie SpongeBob episodes, and then that's the end of the video. Number 10, Ripped Pants. What an absolute laugh fest. And of course, there's the... What am I trying to say? Is that... Let me see. Yeah. Ripped Pants is number 10. I love everything from SpongeBob's whole Ripped Pants jokes. And then the end where they basically teach him a lesson not to freaking pretend he's dead. And he has to apologize to everyone, and it's a good ending. Number 9, Graveyard Shift. The hash-slinging slasher myth is the whole freaking... I'm getting a bit tired. Graveyard Shift is... what am I trying to say? I'm having a brain fart. I've been doing this frickin' for days now. Graveyard Shift is one of the best episodes of the entire series for its whole mythos on the hash-slinging slasher, with so many hilarious scenes. What else can I say? 8, Survival of the Idiots. This episode is just classic scene after classic scene, especially the Dirty Dan scenes. It just brings a freaking laugh fest. 7, One Crab's Trash. I think this episode is an absolute classic and is Mr. Krabs' all-time best episode, in my opinion. 6, the camping episode. The camping episode is a laugh riot, especially the scene where Squidward gets beaten up by the sea bear. Bringing us into the top 5 is Band Geeks. I'm not even going to say anything else. You all know what's so great about Band Geeks. 4, the Krusty Krab training video. I think this is such a departure from the series, but it's so freaking funny that it has to make my top 5. Alright, top 3. Number 3, I Had an Accident. This episode is freaking wonderful. All the different scenes of SpongeBob staying indoors and trying to tell everyone, I'm never going outside again, but when his friends are in need, ultimately, he goes outside and saves the day. Number 2, Christmas Who. The best SpongeBob special of all time. I love... It's not as funny as some of the previous episodes I mentioned, but it's so sweet how Squidward saves the day, basically. It's my favorite of Squidward in the entire series, and the Patchy segments are the best he's ever been in. But my favorite episode of not only the pre-movie era of SpongeBob, but of any SpongeBob episode ever. Number 1 is Chocolate with Nuts. Chocolate! 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 And that is going to do it. This is probably my longest tier list video of all time, but it's finally done. Now stay tuned for the B tier list. I think I said I wasn't going to do a B tier list, but I am ultimately going to do one. And that is going to be 25 Christmas movies. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that, and that's about it. I hope you look forward to my long-awaited SpongeBob pre-movie video. This is the form it's going to take, and that's about it. Gaming Dude here. See you later. Bye.